mountains and mountains of electric cars. Many of them are new. Some of these electric graveyards can look disturbing. We have to wonder, what happened to China's electric vehicle industry? Is this a warning for China's dire economic situation? All will be covered today in China Undercover. If you find our information helpful, please subscribe and turn on the notification. The boom years. Attracted by easy money, the EV industry in China's startups cropped up rapidly. By 2016, there were over 200 companies registered to produce electric vehicles. Many were undeserved players looking to cash in on subsidies. They had minimal experience in auto manufacturing and lacked technological capabilities. However, with government support, they managed to gain licenses and open factories across China. Sales of new energy vehicles, including battery electric and plug-in hybrids, skyrocketed from about 5,000 units in 2011 to over 1 million by 2018. China became the world's largest EV market, accounting for more than half of global sales. Leading domestic brands like BYD emerged as tough competitors to foreign companies. Cracks in the foundation. Common issues included low-range vehicles that could only travel 100–150 km per charge, shoddy manufacturing quality, lack of safety features, and poor design. Most startups sold exclusively to car rental and ride-hailing fleets rather than individual consumers. They had no brand reputation or loyal customer base. Fraud was rampant as firms gamed the subsidy system. Some tactic used were falsely reporting production and sales figures to collect subsidies on non-existent vehicles, stating technical specs like battery range to qualify for higher subsidy tiers, flipping subsidy-eligible vehicles between affiliate companies to collect multiple payouts. While the exact waste from such activities is unknown, estimates suggest government subsidies totaled $30 billion. Much of this went directly into the pockets of opportunistic companies rather than meaningful EV advancement. The government's initial loose oversight and emphasis on quantity over quality enabled the problems to reach epidemic levels. But after exposes of fraud, China started tightening requirements and lowering subsidies from 2017 onward. The bubble bursts. As subsidies declined and quality requirements increased, China's EV bubble began to deflate. Weaker players collapsed instantly, while even the largest startups struggled to turn profits on vehicle production. Over 80 of companies shut down between 2017–2020, and because of that, the environmental damage became visible as EV graveyards emerged across China. Fields filled with thousands of vehicles abandoned by bankrupt startups and rental companies. Unwanted models were discarded hastily once new ones arrived, turning EVs into literal waste. Electric vehicle graveyards. The emergence of electric vehicle graveyards in China serves as a stark visual reminder of the excesses and waste generated by the country's poorly regulated push into EVs. Large fields outside cities like Hangzhou contain thousands of discarded electric cars left abandoned and slowly being destroyed by nature. Similar surreal scenes can be witnessed along the Yangtze River in Nanjing, with never-sold electric vehicles being abandoned after the startups that manufactured them went bankrupt. Even more distressing, perfectly new electric cars sit wasting in the barren Mongolian landscape, representing an entire cancelled production run that failed to find buyers. In rural areas, China's early electric models like the Chery QQ and Baiki are also simply dumped when they break down, as owners cannot find repair parts for these now obsolete first-generation EVs with limited 100 km ranges. Many vehicles still shamelessly retain their license plates and annual inspection stickers, providing evidence that they initially qualified for government subsidies before being discarded. Some even appear new with plastic seat covers still on and minimal wear on tires, exposing how unscrupulous car startups gamed the system just to collect payouts. Environment damage. Piles of discarded electric vehicles littering China's landscape don't just represent economic waste. They also create environmental hazards that directly contradict the eco-friendly image EVs are supposed to project. Toxic battery waste. EV batteries contain heavy metals like lithium, nickel, and cobalt. When not disposed of properly, these metals can leach into surrounding soil and water supplies. Abandoned EV batteries left to decay in fields risk contaminating groundwater and the local ecosystem. Air pollution. Fires sometimes break out in EV graveyards, fueled by flammable lithium-ion batteries. This causes extremely toxic air pollution from burning battery chemicals and plastic components. Harmful PM2.5 particulate matter spreads over surrounding areas. Ground contamination. Batteries left out in the open weather and erode, steadily leaking metals and corrosive electrolytes into the ground. These accumulate in soil, posing risks to plants, animals, and human health through the food chain. Resource waste. The rare earth metals in EV batteries are not being recycled from abandoned vehicles. These finite resources are wasted instead of reclaimed, requiring more destructive mining globally. Reuse is key for supply sustainability. Eyesore landfills. Piles of wasted EVs go against the clean, high-tech image associated with electric mobility. Instead of showcasing sustainability, they represent pollution and irresponsible waste. There is an urgent need to begin recycling valuable battery components like lithium, cobalt, nickel, copper, and aluminum. China has started enacting regulations to hold manufacturers responsible for proper scrap disposal, and some emerging companies now focus on collecting and reclaiming used EV batteries. However, larger-scale recycling plants will need to be built to handle the projected volumes as China's EV market continues to discharge vehicles. Economic damage. The problems of abandoned electric vehicle dumping grounds across China represents substantial economic loss and waste. The direct costs include the raw materials, labor, energy, and capital equipment used to manufacture hundreds of thousands of now useless vehicles. For example, one estimate put the total number of discarded EVs in Hangzhou alone at over 200,000 units. With average EV manufacturing costs around $15,000 per vehicle to the Mars $2,000 per vehicle, the sunk production costs just for Hangzhou could exceed $3 billion. Span that across China's numerous EV graveyards, and the direct manufacturing waste likely reaches into the tens of billions. Indirect costs come from the misallocation of resources that could have been deployed into more productive ventures. The over 500 EV startups that sprang up in China absorbed significant labor, facilities, and investor capital that could have gone towards sustainable businesses with real commercial viability. Government subsidies granted based on fraudulent claims constitute another massive sunk expense, with estimates ranging from $15 billion to $30 billion misused through fake sales numbers, technical specification cheating, and other scams. These astronomical handouts essentially vanished into deception instead of furthering EV development. Absurdity costs arise from the human talent and entrepreneurial efforts absorbed into irrationally exuberant EV startups that ultimately collapsed instead of developing sustainable businesses. The exact potential wasted is difficult to quantify but very real. Reasons for electric vehicle graveyard. For a period, shared electric mobility services actually drove sales growth for China's EV manufacturers, serving as prominent launch customers. Local city transit agencies replaced diesel buses with electric ones, often supplied in bulk orders by OEMs producing simple low-speed models. Ride-hailing platforms like Didi Chuxing also rolled out electric sections, providing drivers with new EVs on subsidized leasing terms meant to reduce costs compared to gasoline cars. Meanwhile, app-based rental startups like Yusu, Evcard, and Yi Auto delivered EVs ultra-low rates, enticing users and investors. But problems soon emerged as the services overestimated true demand, racking up high maintenance costs that could not be passed on to consumers under unprofitable business models. As government subsidies expired, the majority of these ride-hailing and rental services collapsed under financial duress, dumping fleets of vehicles that would be abandoned soon after. This again reveals the risks of forced adoption via mandates or artificial incentives instead of developing organically via efficiency and reasonable pricing. Shared mobility remains an intriguing concept, but actually convincing commuters to forego private car ownership requires convenient charging and service pricing competitive with public transit. The lessons for both government and the private sector are clear. Innovative solutions that directly appeal to mainstream consumers work better than interventionist policies or speculative hype alone. In addition to market distortion, rampant fraud severely undermined China's goal of nurturing a competitive EV industry. With oversight lax during the initial promotional rush, companies devised schemes to illicitly profit from subsidies rather than drive meaningful progress. Some firms completely falsified vehicle production numbers just to claim subsidies on non-existent cars. Others deliberately cheated on technical specifications like range or battery size that were directly tied to higher subsidy amounts. Circular transfers of the same sets of vehicles enabled repeatedly collecting subsidies on individual cars. Shady manufacturers made just enough substandard EVs lacking components to get subsidies before shutting down. Insider affiliate networks sold large batches of cars between linked companies to artificially inflate sales and subsidies. While the exact extent of EV subsidy misuse is unknown, estimates range from $15 billion to $30 to and through deceptive practices instead of furthering innovation. This epitomized the risks of unchecked incentives and the need for stringent verification measures. Finally, China's onerous vehicle inspection requirements and mandatory scrappage rules have also exacerbated its auto graveyard dilemma. Annual testing is required and costs around $50 per test. Just one failure results in forced scrappage regardless of actual condition. Meanwhile, regulations demand cars be scrapped once they reach 600,000 chem odometer readings, with local inspectors having broad discretion. The consequences are high failure and mandated scrappage rates, sending many still functional vehicles to premature junkyard retirement. Providing more flexibility in testing criteria and scrappage policies could significantly reduce unnecessary waste. In summary, China's aggressive EV promotion delivered rapid growth but proved unsustainable as policies generated overproduction, fraud, and waste instead of efficiency. Market dynamics and consumer demand now appropriately drive a leaner, more resilient industry. In conclusion, the glut of abandoned electric vehicles littering China's landscape reveals how blind pursuit of production, quotas, and incentives can backfire and led to massive waste when underlying demand is weak. Had EV startups focused more on building practical, quality vehicles aligned with consumer needs rather than chasing government subsidies, perhaps fewer models would end up prematurely scrapped. And if state motivations emphasized reasonable progress and sustainability over headline production figures, excessive overcapacity could have been avoided. There are parallels to the classic case of China's great leap forward between 1958 and 1962, where local officials falsely inflated agricultural and industrial output numbers to please central planners, leading to severe economic dysfunction when the truth emerged. The EV graveyards are a microcosm of this phenomenon. The incentives for startups to vastly overstate production and sales were simply too high, just as officials exaggerated yields back then to meet unrealistic targets. While abandoned EV piles are the most visually striking consequence of the Chinese electric vehicle bubble bursting, even more waste is generated from scrapping functional gasoline cars prematurely. Regulations forcing retirement at fixed ages or mileages mean vehicles are destroyed regardless of actual condition. With no used car market and stringent annual inspections, owners cannot prolong vehicle lifespans through maintenance and repairs either. The entire system seems designed to produce maximum auto waste rather than pragmatically inspecting merits case by case. Simply providing even slightly more flexibility or discretion in scrappage rules could significantly cut unnecessary waste. Used car markets thrive in other countries, proving regulation and consumer safety need not be incompatible with reasonable lifetime mileage. China's EV graveyards thus exemplify twin problems: producing vehicles without regard for actual demand, and destroying vehicles without considering their remaining utility. And that is today's episode. If you found this video informative, please subscribe and ring a bell to get notification. Thank you for watching and see you next time.